What is up, basketball fans? I am Jason Burgos for Sportsnaut.com, and I am joined by a veteran of the NBA reporting wars. Currently, he serves as a lead writer and managing editor for NBC Sports, and that is the one and only Kurt Helin. Kurt, thanks so much for the time today.
Thanks for having me, man. This will be fun.
I always enjoy talking to you, and of course, I have a bunch of questions so you can take me to the learning tree on the latest of what's going on in the NBA. So I definitely want to get into some early offseason talk eventually, but first, let's get into some playoff talk. First, Western Conference. In your mind, is there a dark horse out west? Following kind of the changes they made to the lineup and how they've played the last couple months, should people be looking at the Lakers, maybe making a run like they did last year? Is the duo of Luka and Kyrie, are they going to be a serious problem? And maybe they've started to round into perfect form at the right time. Could the Suns maybe surprise, beat the Wolves, go on a little bit of run? Is there any dark horse in your mind aside from the Nuggets in the West?
Yeah, I don't think it's the Lakers only because they run into the Nuggets in the first series, and the Nuggets have just kind of owned them, right? They're, I think, better. I think they take a game, maybe two. LeBron is fresher. It's earlier in the series. They've gone to this more offensive system under, away from the defense, but like a more offensive lineup that can hopefully score with Denver. Ultimately, it's not going to matter. Like the two-man game between Murray and Jokic is something the Lakers can't stop. And the last 8 wins have all followed the same pattern, right? Like Lakers hang around, it's close, it's tight for 40 minutes, 42 minutes, and then the last 6 to 8 minutes, they're like, all right, let's find that other gear. And Lakers just don't have an answer. And I think that's what does this. Lakers win 1 or 2, but it's not there. My dark horse is Dallas. I'm really high on them.
Yeah.
Just because, Luka's always been a playoff monster. He's going to be a playoff monster. Kyrie Irving, he hit a couple big shots. Like he has been, he's going to show up in the big minutes. You know he can play, and he's been such a model citizen there. But the real key is, since they got Gafford at the trade deadline, they get Gafford, they put him in the starting lineup finally, and they get him next to Derrick Jones Jr. This is a good defensive team now. Like, good enough defensive team to make a run. I think they've got a shot. I liked Phoenix before the season, and I like this matchup for them. They give Minnesota trouble, but ultimately I think Dallas is a team built for the longest run of the group.
Among the various teams out west, is there any legit threat to the Nuggets? As they go deeper into the playoffs, is there any team that's like quite on their level, or just honestly, the trio of Jokic, Murray, and head coach Mike Malone are just too good, and there's just not quite a team on their level in the West right now?
There isn't a team on their level right now. I mean, they've got to stay healthy. They need Michael Porter Jr. to be good. I'm not really worried about Aaron Gordon being good because Aaron Gordon's kind of just always good now. He frankly was always pretty good in Orlando in a very different role.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody there, but they need Peyton Watson to be good in these playoffs, and he hasn't had to show that yet. Long Beach Poly, shout him out, but we'll see if they've got to do some stuff. They've got to prove a few things. I don't know that they're as deep or I trust them quite as much as last year, but I still don't think at the end of the day they got the best player in basketball and the best two-man game in basketball, and I don't think in crunch time anybody can match them in the West. So
let's pivot over to the Eastern Conference. Same kind of thing. When it comes to dark horses, is there one? I'm a Knicks fan. I'm a big believer in how well they play together, Brunson, and their defense. Defense is always big in the playoffs. Are they a team to watch to maybe get to the conference finals, maybe get Boston? Are the Bucks, are they just too talented with their top 2 stars, Doc Rivers as coach, to not get on a hot run and be a serious threat, a dark horse kind of team now because they've been struggling in weird ways? Or is a team like the Magic, are they kind of flying under the radar? Maybe they might surprise some people when they do in the playoffs.
I think the Magic could win a round. I think they've got a good matchup for them in the first round, but you're not going to like this. I kind of like Philly.
Understandable. I mean, they got one of the best.
Sorry about this, man, because I honestly think whoever comes out of, and I think that series is pretty close to a toss-up. I lean Philly just because if Joel Embiid is close to himself, they've got the best player in the series. With no offense to Brunson, without the secondary shot creation of Julius Randle, it becomes really hard. You can. In the playoffs, when I can load up on one guy and take away your first option as a good defensive team, as good as Brunson is, and he will get his, you really need that second guy, and not having him mean, DiVincenzo will get some, and he's got some bounce. And you think the Warriors could have used him this year? That said, I just don't know that there's enough. I kind of like them. But I think whoever comes out of that series, honestly, can beat whoever comes out of Milwaukee, Indiana. Milwaukee just, I mean, have they impressed you? Have they, they have not coalesced.
Not considering who they got. Yeah, crazy.
And they haven't looked good. Doc Rivers, coaching wasn't the problem completely. I mean, you can pick and choose at that, but it hasn't, suddenly jumped up the ladder since they've been there. And Indiana doesn't play any defense. By the way, I think Indiana has a very legitimate shot to win that series. I would, if I were a betting man, I would seriously take a long look at Indiana. They won 4 out of 5 in the regular season. They are a tough matchup when they get out and run. Because they didn't have to go through the play-in, you get basically a week off for Tyrese Halliburton and that hamstring that has never quite gotten right again to get better. And no Giannis. They're only saying the first game. I'm guessing 2 minimum, maybe longer. Now you're relying on Chris Middleton to really I don't have. Dame will have a game, but you need Middleton. I think Indiana can win that series, and then second round, they just don't play enough defense. They're absolutely, even with Siakam now, they're just absolutely beatable by whoever comes out of Knicks Philly. I think whoever comes out of Knicks Philly can get to the conference finals against Boston, and then you take your chances.
As a Knicks fan, I was definitely rooting for the Heat. I just felt that was a good matchup, and obviously, the Sixers are a problem. But on the flip side, is this a tough matchup to give Knicks fans some hope for the Sixers? Are the Knicks probably because of Mitchell Robinson, because of Achua coming off the bench, Hartenstein, size, defense they play? This is a tough matchup for Philly and Embiid. Yeah,
they've got the size to throw at him. Hartenstein has quietly been I didn't end up putting him on. I seriously considered him for all defensive team this year. He got thrown into the mix and did brilliantly for them in that role. Yeah. And again, they are going to need their shooting to fall together. They're going to need some stuff. But I don't think this is an easy matchup for either side. And I think what's going to be fun about this series, the same thing, frankly, that was fun about that, except for the Jimmy Butler injury that he fought through. But the fun thing about that Philadelphia-Miami game, and that was Eastern Conference playoff basketball, man. That was just physical and gritty with moments of personal brilliance and shot creation. But and I think you're with the Sixers and the Knicks, you're going to get 6 games of that or whatever it ends up being. That is going to be a grinding, physical Eastern Conference series. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah. Now, last question on the playoffs. The Celtics have just seemed like the uncrowned kings of the East all season long, just because they've been the best team in the league. But from what you've watched, seeing them and stuff like that, what would you say is their clearest weakness? And is there a specific team in the East that would best exploit them in a matchup in the playoffs?
I don't know. I mean, in theory, the theory of the Milwaukee Bucks would give them trouble with Dame, with whatever, but what their real problem in that series is the guy they let get away in Milwaukee. To get Dame, they've got to give up Drew Holiday. Should have done something to make sure he didn't land in Boston, because now we've got an Olympian defender. Hey, this is the guy we need to be the glue guy on the Olympic team, defending Dame in that series. That's not good for Milwaukee. The theory of Milwaukee is there. After that, I go back to I'll take Embiid just because nobody has an answer for Embiid, but he has to, frankly, to get by the Knicks, but certainly to get by Boston. He's just got to be back to playing at an MVP level. And he did it in the fourth quarter against Miami. He can do it for stretches. He's going to have to do it for longer stretches. But honestly, the weaknesses with Boston are, sometimes their offense gets a little tight in clutch games, and they're not moving the ball around. But you got to get them to clutch games. You got to get them there and push them there. And outside of Denver, I don't know if anybody can do that enough to win those games.
Now, for me, it's never too early to talk the offseason. It's always fun. Now, first, the Warriors. They obviously got to make changes. Draymond, Wiggins seem like they could be the odd man out just because they don't want to trade Kuminga. They like him for all the problems he might have caused. Could you see them making a big move this summer, or will it kind of just be the goal is addition by subtraction, get out of the payroll hell they kind of put themselves in, and maybe just get some smaller pieces around Steph?
They have to get out of the payroll thing matters to them, getting out of the second apron of the tax and all that.
Yeah.
which is understandable with their tax bill this year. I think Bobby Marks tweeted this out. It's $382 million with tax and salary for a team that got bounced in the play-in. Like that's not good enough, and they're not going to, frankly, be much better than that. If you go on the, I don't know, call it the Fleetwood Mac nostalgia tour. Like we'll bring the band back and play the hits. Like if you run them back, like that's what you're going to get. Yeah. So. Yeah. I think you're going to see them try to make changes. I'm not sure if that's Wiggins or not. I'm going to rephrase that. I'm not sure if it's Thompson or not. Klay Thompson is a free agent.
Okay, yeah.
There are teams, Orlando, that would be interested. I've heard other teams. I've heard Dallas's name come up. But the question is really, how much are they going to offer him, and does somebody come in over the top? And what does he ultimately want? Is he willing to take a few million less at this point in his career? Yeah. To stay home, because he's still a good NBA player. He's a quality NBA starter, rotation player, however you want to define it. But he's not a max guy. He's $18 to $20 million a year starter money, and maybe, and even that might be a tad generous. And we'll see what people offer. But I think that Wiggins is the guy they want to move. Like they'd like to move him because he doesn't pan out. They paid him to be Klay Thompson. He was during that championship run, right? Yeah. Second best player on that team.
Yep.
He hasn't been that guy. He's just not that guy night in and night out. He's gone back to being the Andrew Wiggins we kind of all know, that once every 2 weeks he has that game and you're like, that guy. Yeah. Where do we find that guy? And then he's not that guy again.
And that's probably good news for the Warriors. I mean, he's only 29. He's probably the easier to trade of him and Draymond. Just as good as Draymond is just
well, and they gave Draymond. Draymond's still kind of essential to what they do defensively, but also they gave him the extension last year. He got $375 left on his deal, I think. So that's harder to move. Wiggins, you're going to have to attach Kuminga or Moody, or they're not going to trade pods, but you're going to have to attach draft picks. You're going to have to attach something to that contract as a sweetener. And I think what they're willing to attach would depend on what comes back. Ultimately, and we've now beat around the bush, they got to get a second shot creator, a second high-level quality shot creator. I mean, it was just Steph Curry looked exhausted in that game, against the Kings, who could throw multiple quality defenders at him. And I don't want to take anything away from what the Kings did. But the Warriors used to eat that stuff up. Like, you want to throw that many guys at us? Well, we got Andre Iguodala, and we had Klay Thompson, and we had, obviously Durant for a couple of years, whatever. Like, there've always been other guys, and they don't have that guy right now.
Yeah. Assuming the Suns don't get on a hot run here and live up to the potential of that team, this has been a hugely disappointing season for them. Yeah, they made the playoffs, they avoided the play and stuff like that, but is it possible? Like, Vogel's a one and done? Do they blow this whole thing up? Could Kevin Durant be gone in just 2 years? Like, how do you see the Suns going if they Timberwolves out them in the first round?
And which is distinctly possible. Frankly, the Timberwolves on paper should be able to do it. It's been a tough matchup for them. I don't think they blow it up. I think they largely run it back. Matt Ishbia is all in on this, and they just gave Grayson Allen an extension because he earned it. He was fantastic this year, but he also, they can't afford to let him go because they can't replace him. They're just so deep into the tax. Like, he's one of those, it's the bird rights trap where if he leaves, we just can't replace him with anybody of quality, so we're going to have to maybe even overpay him a little just to keep him. If there's a fall guy, it's probably Vogel. That would be my guess, and I would have said they've got the perfect replacement in Kevin Young sitting right there on the bench, a guy that players like, whatever, except he's now the BYU coach. He went back home to Salt Lake City. Well, BYU's not in Salt Lake City, but went back home to Utah. And I always want to put it there for some reason.
Yeah, close enough. Same area, same state.
They'll have to go find somebody, but if they feel they need to make a change, I think Vogel's the guy who's fairly or unfairly going to get that axe.
Is there a good option then out there? Do they kind of maybe go after someone we don't? Is it? I can't believe the Nets passed him. Is it Budenholzer? Is that maybe the guy they go for? Like, who's out there you feel that might be even an option? Because they just went for a guy that just won a title a few years ago. Yeah. He wasn't good enough.
Yeah, and Budenholzer brings. It'd be an interesting fit. He brings a lot of credibility. He also brings a system, right? You know what Mike Budenholzer wants to do.
Yeah.
But that roster really doesn't fit what Mike Budenholzer wants to do. Right? I want to drop. Well, I mean, they've got Nurkic, so they can play the drop big defense. But like, he's such a defense first guy, and plays a very, like, again, a kind of very specific style and system, and it works. It worked in Atlanta, frankly, when we're going to play this defensive first system and just have ISO Joe go nuts, down in Atlanta, and they win 60. Like, the offense will be fine. I don't know if he could get them to play enough defense, but that, it also, okay, Matt Ishbia, how much do you want to pay? Like, you're paying a lot of money for a team that's going to be deep into the tax next year. Do you want to pay? Budenholzer is going to come at that higher end of the range now. He's not going to come cheap. He's going to come, ever since Monty Williams skewed the coaching scale last year, like, he's going to come in expensive. So that's a question for ownership. Like, if you want to pay, you're going to pay Vogel plus pay whoever comes in. Is the upgrade? I think your question is right. Like, is the upgrade worth it? Like, who are you going to get? That's, and we say all that. I mean, Jason, between you and me, what's Kevin Durant want?
Yeah. It's the truth. So, there have been rumblings about 76ers and Paul George. Some saying it's the most, the loudest secret in the game right now. But there's also been some little reporting lately, too, about 76ers maybe looking at Bronny James in the draft. And maybe they have the money. If LeBron opts out, maybe LeBron comes. You got LeBron and Bronny. Which is more likely? Because the both of them are kind of big rumors right now, but still, far from a foregone conclusion. Which one do you think is a better thing? Because it seems like the 76ers, they can't go all the way. They can't get to the conference finals. They can't beat, get to the finals or whatever. They're that one piece away. George makes sense, I get it. LeBron makes sense. It's at a position that makes sense for them.
Yeah.
Which one would you think is better? George, injury issues, get a little older. LeBron, much older, but, still seems a little bit more healthier than Paul George and Bronny. What do you think would be a better fit?
I think they're leaning George. Like, Bronny, drafting Bronny, bringing in LeBron is it changed. Bringing in LeBron is bringing in a culture change, and I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, but he's not stepping into your culture. He is, not to go all James Harden, he is the culture, right? Like, that is now a LeBron locker room and a LeBron experience. And how does Tyrese Maxey handle that? How does, whatever? Like, talent-wise, it's what they need in an upgrade on the wing, and they've got the max cap space. But that's an experience, and I still ultimately don't think he leaves Los Angeles. I think beyond the fact that he's going to make however much he makes a few more bucks off the court than on it, obviously, at this point in his career, and he's happy here. We'll see. And Bronny's an interesting case, like, because if he weren't LeBron James' son, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think he's an NBA prospect. I keep hearing, like, he's got potential, but if he wasn't LeBron's son, he wouldn't be getting drafted this year.
Yeah.
I think Paul George makes a lot more sense, and for Paul George, it's great leverage to either you leave and go. If you're not happy, and the chemistry in that locker room seems pretty good, but if he wants to move on, he can. They can max him out. He can go to a place he can win, and he can use it as leverage to get the most money he can out of Steve Ballmer, because Ballmer is opening a new building. He's got Kawhi Leonard locked up. He will get James Harden this summer. You can't extend him off that deal, so it's just a matter. I think it's ultimately a matter of money. Kawhi took a little less to stay home. I don't think Paul George and James Harden feel that way.
The Pelicans, they won a little bit more, and they were in, a playoff team, stuff like that, although playing team. Yeah. But they've still been kind of a bit of a disappointment for me. Do you feel like there's always been these rumors about Zion? Oh, they might trade him, the injuries and everything, but he stayed healthy. So, I mean, maybe that helps his value. Where do the Pelicans go? Do they kind of maybe blow it up? Maybe Zion Williamson is moved. Maybe the Rockets or the Pistons are in play for someone like him. Or is it McCollum and Ingram? They're the odd guys out, and they're like, okay, finally Zion can stay healthy. We'll build a new thing around him.
think it would be more to keep Zion and build around him. I mean, in theory, you could probably come in with some sort of Godfather fantasy basketball offer, but I don't know that exists in the real world, and I don't think they want to trade him. He's still. Didn't that game sum up his career? Like, I mean, he was the best player on the floor. He was blowing by LeBron, and you're like, he's going to pull them back. They might win this thing, and Biden trades him again. So, I think though they're more likely to try to find shooting, and Valanciunas is out. There's a feeling that if they can get a rim protecting center in the paint to help on that end, somebody who anchors their defense a little bit, because Herb Jones is one of the first team all defense for me, like really good defender. Trey Murphy, they've got defenders. Jose Alvarado, like they've got guys. They just need somebody behind them to clean up a little. The defense gets better. You hope everybody stays healthy, but I don't know. Isn't it keeping everybody healthy there? Like they look great when. I guess it's the other big question that they ultimately have to ask, but I don't know if they're ready to answer it yet, which is Zion and Ingram. Does that really work at the level you need it to work, or can you trade Ingram and get X that fits better with Zion? Is this a matter of it's not even necessarily a talent upgrade, just a fit upgrade?
Last question. A lot of talk about these two guys possibly getting traded, but it's fascinating scenarios. Trae Young, Donovan Mitchell. Trae Young, again, Hawks disappoint, out playing already. A lot of talk about Trae Young possibly getting traded for like the last year. Seems like this is more than possible than ever before, but he's still kind of the face of the franchise. Still their probably most marketable star, homegrown star. Donovan Mitchell, been great for the Cavaliers. Still a really good team. They dealt with a lot of injuries, and he was the guy, a lot like Brunson in ways, that was still good for a good bit, anchored them and held them above water and stuff like that. But there's all this talk about he's probably not going to re-sign. You would want to trade him now while you have the value of a whole another year left. And it comes down to it. Which one do you think that this summer is more likely to get traded?
That's close. I will say Trae Young, because they are going to try hard to trade Trae Young. I'm not even like that's going to happen. I will tell you from executives and just people I've talked to around the league, these calls often go something like this: Trae Young, what would that look like? By the way, is DeJounte available? Like, people in the league are just like DeJounte's game better, where Trae Young doesn't defend, demands the ball. He's going to have the ball a lot on offense, and by the way, scores a lot of points, gets a lot of assists, will bring your offense up. Like, I don't want to he's an all-star, borderline all-NBA offensive player, but there's a sense that you can't really build a true winner around him. You could with DeJounte. So, they're going to try to move him. They've got to move one of them. It obviously doesn't work. Yeah. But it's going to be really interesting to see how that shakes out and what they might ultimately have to settle for to move Trae and bring back. And they need to retool that guy. They're hard to watch. They were hard to watch in that play-in game, man. Donovan Mitchell's. We're going to find out what's important to him, aren't we?
Yeah.
Like, is he going to do what I guarantee you his agent is telling him to do, which is sign the max. If you want to leave, we can get you out in 2 years, which is kind of how things go around the NBA now. Like, just take the bag. If you're unhappy, we'll figure it out. But is the money big enough at this point where he's just kind of like, no, I really want out, and I want to go. The Knicks have long been rumored. Your Knicks would be an obvious fit. But there would be a line of teams though willing to, Orlando. There'd be a line of teams willing to jump in there if he comes available. It's really what's important to him. Is it going home? Is it the money? Is it what does he ultimately want? And I think this playoff run could have a say in that. Do they lose to Orlando in the first round, or do they get to the second round, and even if they get bounced in the second round, they have a good series, and he plays well, and suddenly you can see a path forward. They've got some decisions to make beyond him, with Evan Mobley and how that all fits. But it's going to be interesting. Ultimately, it comes down to Donovan Mitchell's going to have the options, and we're going to find out what he really wants.